And hello again from WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'm Josh Manning, Deputy Managing Editor for the Western Journal. Joining me on my left is Brian Chai, Deputy Managing Editor for Features at the Western Journal. And on my right is Deborah Van Kempen, who I always call Deborah Van Helsing, like the vampire hunter of yore. And
my
Deborah,
crossbow's in the back.
And you are an editor here at the Western Journal. Busy news day today. Lots going on. We have some interesting stuff to talk with you all about. We're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're talking about Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary. And then we've got some very interesting comments about impeachment and Hillary Clinton, of all people. So stay tuned for that. Leading off, we're going to kick over to Brian. Brian, you have got Mitch McConnell and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Tell us what's going on.
So, yeah, there's been some, I don't even know if simmering is the right word, some serious tensions growing between sort of the more traditional establishment, GOP leadership, and some of the newer incoming, the younger blood Republicans coming in. And some of that kind of boiled over on Monday when Mitch McConnell, without stating Marjorie Taylor Greene by name, basically kind of alluded to her. And in a statement, McConnell said, "Loony lies and conspiracy theories are cancer for the Republican Party and our country. Somebody who suggested that perhaps no airplane hit the Pentagon on 9/11, that horrifying school shootings were pre-staged, and that the Clintons crashed JFK Jr.'s airplane is not living in reality. This has nothing to do with the challenges facing American families or the robust debates on substance that can strengthen our party." That was, like I said, he did not name Marjorie Taylor Greene by name, but very clearly, that is very clearly in reference to her. Marjorie Taylor Greene on Twitter responded to Mitch McConnell. If we could go ahead and put that tweet up real quick, guys. There we are. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, "The real cancer for the Republican Party is weak Republicans who only know how to lose gracefully. This is why we are losing our country." Obviously a pretty forceful response to a forceful, original kind of accusation by McConnell.
Yeah, the word loony and things like that.
So obviously, I do want to make it clear, Marjorie Taylor Greene certainly believes in a few things that I vehemently disagree with. A lot of the more fringe theories that she has peddled, I think, actually do some harm to the Republican Party, because she has become, now with Trump sort of kind of waiting in the background now for whatever is next for him. The mainstream media has certainly latched onto Greene as the new de facto big bad, if you will.
Find the easiest target in the room.
Yep.
And go after it.
And Greene has, she's been a fighter. Like, I will give her that. She is always willing to speak her mind. And actually, also on Monday, Taylor Greene, in a Twitter response, said, "The DC swamp and the fake news media are attacking me because I am not one of them. I'm one of you, and they hate me for it." So that is very much the character, not character, I guess, but
the Trump ethos.
Yeah, the Trump ethos that she has channeled. And it's interesting to me. Initially, I was a little worried seeing kind of all this develop. A fractured Republican Party is not a good thing. I think that's pretty fair to say. But at the same time, the more I thought about it, it got me thinking sort of big picture. I guess before we get to the big picture, though, first I want to ask you guys, do you guys think Mitch McConnell is stepping a little out of line here? Marjorie Taylor Greene is a representative in the House. Mitch McConnell is in the Senate. It feels to me like McConnell probably has bigger things to worry about, like getting back the Senate majority. So first off, do you guys think McConnell is stepping out of line with his sort of line of attack on Greene?
I think that McConnell is doing what he believes is the only thing he can do at this point, which is to attack the what he calls far-right members of his own party. I think that he is definitely a more moderate Republican. He's very establishment, but I think that he he was not on board with a lot of the things that Trump was claiming, like in terms of that the election was stolen and just different things like this that Greene believes. And, like you said, a lot of her beliefs, I don't personally agree with. But I think that what McConnell may be trying to do right now is I think that he's trying to kind of grab on to the only thing that he has left, which is to out other members of his party and say, we don't agree with them. This is not the Republican Party as a whole. Like, we basically like elect us in the future because this is not what the overall party looks like. I think that that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good thought. Certainly, some of it is him trying to marginalize somebody who he thinks has beliefs that would damage the Republican Party, the GOP's reputation, that would make the GOP look like a fringe party and things like that. Part of the problem with that, there are a number of problems in this. First off, Marjorie Taylor Greene, what she thinks as far as school shootings go, as far as gosh, I can't think of Q and things like that.
9/11.
These are obviously 9/11 conspiracies. These are obviously ridiculous ideas.
Right.
These are obviously ideas that an extreme fringe has. But what's remarkable to me is that Democrats is that voters in her district looked at her versus whoever the Democrat was who was running and said, okay, well, we'll take somebody who at least loves the country and is willing to fight for the little guy, even if she's got some crazy. We'll take that over what the left is offering. You could also, we were talking about this earlier today in an editors meeting. And somebody brought up this idea that, well, you know, she had a Republican contender in the primary. And presumably what happened is that Republicans in her district looked at her and looked at the other Republican and figured, well, she's a fighter. Maybe the other one isn't.
Yeah.
So let's go in this direction. I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think the majority of voters in her district in Georgia think that 9/11 didn't happen or was an inside job.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they don't share her convictions on these kind of out there things, it may be that they see in her someone who will fight the establishment. And, you know, maybe it doesn't matter to them if she's wrong about some things. That at the end of the day, I'm actually not positive what difference believing these things makes. I'm not sure how that's going to impact how she votes on much of anything. I'm fairly sure if legislation came up that said, oh, well, we're against cannibalism, I think she would have voted against it anyway. You know, so I'm not sure how much that changes things. One other quick point. What's interesting to me is how the media and the left and so many people, Republicans, conservatives, are just the dumbest people in the world about shooting their own soldiers. Everybody has globbed onto her. And it seems much less egregious to me for her to believe, granted, a ridiculous idea about an international pedophile ring. There probably are international pedophile rings, but it's not what Q's describing. It seems far less ridiculous to me to believe that than for an enormous number of people on the left to lionize Marxist doctrines that killed tens of millions of people and seem to be completely okay with it. And no one say a word about it other than Dennis Prager, Ben Shapiro, and us.
Yeah,
That's a remarkable thing. So as you're thinking about this, folks, yeah, Marjorie Greene's got some issues. Sure, she'll probably vote the way she needs to vote. But just consider all of the fire being thrown at her for a set of beliefs that at the end of the day maybe doesn't make that much of a difference practically. And how many avowed leftists are out there and completely unquestioned about the Gulag Archipelago, about what happened in Vietnam, about torture, about all of these things. That's a remarkable double standard.
Yeah, I
went on too long. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So I genuinely am not a big fan of her personally, but you know, credit where it's due. She has pushed a lot of conservative values that I think some conservatives don't think are worth fighting for anymore, such as she's been vocally pro-life, very pro-Second Amendment. I believe she actually even signed on to a bill trying to fight back against the idea of having, I always get the descriptions mixed up, but I think the correct term is transgender males or transgender females competing in female sports.
Essentially men competing with women. Men who say they're women competing with women.
And, you know, she's against all that, which Great.
Yeah.
I think those
Yeah.
are all very conservative values that she pushes, even if it comes, and again, this is just purely my personal opinion, slightly unsavory packaging. But yeah, it's interesting to think also. So in the big term, guys, what do you think ultimately? So let's say, if Josh and I, we're not nearly as young as Deborah. If Josh and I are still around in, let's say, 25 years.
Around on the planet or here? I hope I'm around on the planet. Frankly, I hope I'm not still working with you in 25 years. But but we know that. No, it's all right. We know the feeling is mutual.
100%.
We share a wall. We have a dividing wall.
Yeah, it's like the world's worst neighbor. But anyways,
Yeah, he is.
Let's say in about 25 years, what do you think the Republican Party is kind of going to sort of look like? Do you think it's more traditional Mitch McConnell type
Really good
of
question.
establishment, or do we see more, Marjorie Taylor Greene's, like you aptly said, Josh, Republicans who very much channel the ethos of Trump? Like, what do you think we see more of in 20, 25 years?
Well, going back to Greene's tweet, I do think that obviously she has some crazy ideas that I don't agree with, but I think that she does have a point. The Republican Party has kind of gotten a reputation for, being great at taking a beating. We are graceful losers, and I think that she highlighted that in a way that really, it's a bit of a wake-up call, because I think that the Republican Party has just gotten so used to Democrats taking hold of everything, taking hold of Hollywood, taking hold of the establishment media, convincing the majority of Americans that the vast majority of them are blue, when in reality you can look at a voter map and go, wow, that's a lot of red. And I think that if it continues this way, I see the Republican Party just getting very kind of being at a standstill and not really doing a whole lot about it, just continuing to let Democrats kind of walk all over them. That's personally.
To be clear, Josh is not a graceful loser. You can interpret that how you will.
In actual competitions where you're supposed to show sportsmanship, I am a gracious loser. When it comes to informal inter-office competitions or any time I'm wrong about something, that's very, very difficult. Very difficult. But anyway, yes, you're right. I think, Deborah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I would even take it a little bit farther and say that if the Republican Party behaves in the way you describe, I think part of it will try to behave that way. And the left, Republicans, you're right, they're gracious losers. They also know how to lose. They don't generally know how to win. They don't know how to take territory. And there's a definitional problem there, because they're conservative. Generally, they want things to stay the same. If you've got somebody who wants to stay the same and somebody who wants to be aggressive, the aggressive ones ultimately over time is going to make progress. And I think that's what will happen. The real question here, I think, is, will the American people allow the Republican Party to do that and allow the left and Democrats to take more and more control? Yeah. I'm increasingly concerned, and I think I've said this on the podcast before. I don't remember if you guys were here. I'm increasingly concerned that if you see Democrats begin to admit new states like D.C. and Puerto Rico, if you see them abolish the Electoral College, if you see them, and I think the kiss of death, packing the courts, I think the kiss of death, though, would be proportional representation in the Senate. They want all of those things. If they do those, at some point, there's going to be a group of people in a number of states that are going to say, hold on here, our vote means nothing. Essentially, New York and California elect the president.
Yeah.
The courts don't mean anything anymore. I'm saddled with, my kids have got, $70,000 of debt when they come out of the womb, or however much it is. I can't recall now. And I'm paying income taxes. What am I getting out of this deal?
Yeah.
That's what worries me, is that if the Republicans don't stand up and don't beat back the left, eventually there are a lot of people who are going to say, well, heck, what's in this deal for me? I want to cut a new deal. And that's an extraordinarily dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of people who are probably wondering what's in it for me, I hear that reporters are not super thrilled with White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
I thought you were going to be
Oh.
insulting to Deborah. I thought you were going to say, speaking of people who are interested in what's in it for them, Deborah. I thought that's what you were
I
going to
would
do, but you
never.
didn't. You were very gracious.
Thank you, Brian. No, it's honestly, it's really funny actually. So the new White House press secretary, Jen Psaki.
Jen
Psaki.
Yeah, Jen.
Psaki.
The new White House press secretary, she just has not been having a very good 2 weeks. She, I don't know if you guys saw the clip, but there has been a very funny video circulating around the internet that's showing her claims to circle back with reporters and then not actually doing it. So she just, she seems to be having a bit of trouble with the job. And we actually ran a story on this earlier today. According to a report by the Daily Beast, they said that they had a few reporters in on an unofficial kind of informal Zoom call, and they were discussing how supposedly the White House communications staff has approached reporters before news briefings and asked them what kinds of questions they are going to bring, ask them what kinds of questions they're going to ask her. And, this could very well just be that the White House is trying to help her out a little bit because, she doesn't seem to know how to answer a lot of the questions. But,
she'll circle back to them.
She will, yeah, eventually, one day. But it's also kind of concerning because you're like, wait a second, this doesn't really sound like freedom of the press to me. So, and that's what the reporters were discussing, which is interesting since a lot of the reporters in there are from very leftist media outlets.
Yep.
So I just wanted to kind of raise the question to you guys. Do we think that the establishment media is finally kind of getting a taste of their own medicine and is finally kind of waking up to the fact that, she's not doing too great. Like, they need to actually start answering some real questions.
I don't think the establishment media is really learning all that much, if I'm going to be brutally honest. Because I just look at the way this story has happened versus imagine if Kayleigh McEnany ever decided to screen, circle back or even pre-screen.
Can you imagine?
Yeah,
can
if
you
McEnany wanted
imagine?
to pre-screen questions from reporters, can you imagine the kind of wall-to-wall, CNN, MSNBC, the kind of coverage that would get, as opposed to this, where a couple reporters are raising a stink, but that's about it. So, no, I don't think they're really kind of learning a lesson here or anything. This is just, they're a little miffed. They're going to get over it because they want to get over it. So yeah, I feel like the establishment media is, we know who they are at this point. It's clear as night and day, and it's kind of sad.
First off, Democrats in office, Democrats trying to get into office, they are used to that kind of treatment. Remember, Donna Brazile gave Hillary Clinton the list of questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
They're used to this. This is normal treatment. You are 100% right, Brian. I mean, it would be the end of the world if Kayleigh McEnany or Sarah Huckabee had asked for questions ahead of time. Yeah. I do think it's the case she's saying she'll circle back because she doesn't have anything meaningful to say. I wish I could remember who I was reading earlier today. But the writer made the point that really Biden's MO right now needs to be just to stay completely low, do almost nothing to shake the boat, to rock the boat. Eventually the virus is going to be under control. We know the vaccines are being distributed. He just needs to stay kind of underground like he did during his campaign, and everything will eventually be fine. I do wonder if the press got used to, without realizing it, got used to Trump giving them so much grist. I mean, he talked to them nonstop. They hated everything he said, but he talked to them nonstop.
Yeah.
And so they had just no shortage of stuff to write about.
Yeah.
With Biden not doing much of anything other than executive orders,
Right.
what do you say? They've still, and maybe they are beginning to feel the pinch. We all know the New York Times was not in good shape before Trump came on the scene.
Right.
Trump is the one who basically single-handedly saved the New York Times, according to many people. Maybe now they're beginning to realize, oh gosh, we're not going to attack him. What do we have to write about?
I mean, that was always going to be the case. I mean, CNN's ratings, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I remember looking at it, and literally from the moment Biden was sworn in, their ratings have started to go down. Like, that's, like, what do you, when you made your living the last 4 years just bashing Trump, what happens when you can't bash him?
But let's not forget, my favorite thing about Jen so far is using that gesture.
Does
this
she
gesture,
not know that's a symbol?
This gesture, if you don't know, this gesture usually means A-OK, or it can mean three-pointer. It is a rude gesture in some cultures. I can't remember. I remember reading up on this. There are a couple countries where you're actually not supposed to do this. It's a rude, crude gesture. Mm-hmm. But Jen has been seen doing this, and for the last 4 years, we've been told this is an incredibly racist dog whistle.
How dare she?
This is signaling you hate minorities. You are part. Did it signal that you're actually part of a conspiracy? I can't remember.
Maybe.
It was some absolutely ridiculous AstroTurf thing to try to attack conservatives and paint them as racists.
Yeah.
But it turns out people in the Biden White House do it too, because it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. It means nothing. But we've seen no stories so far that I'm aware of suggesting that there might be any sort of racial animus on her part.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to get that.
You know, it's funny that you bring that up, actually, because I remember we ran a story when Kamala Harris was getting sworn in, and Justice Sonia pronounced her name wrong.
Kamala.
She should have been called a racist for that.
That's it. It was very racist.
Yeah.
There was no shortage. After Biden picked his running mate, who, strangely enough, earlier said she believed Biden's accusers when people were saying, oh my gosh, he assaulted me, he molested me, this and that. I believe him, Kamala said. He picks her. There were all of these stories about how conservatives, it was dog whistled racism when they didn't say Kamala. They said Kamala or Kamala.
Yes.
And then Justice Sotomayor.
Yeah, because of course that's a very common name that we should all know how to pronounce.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no grace or forgiveness at all.
All right, calm down, Joshua.
That's that's like the Jewish pronunciation. Yes. All right, so moving on. Do you want to hit a dead horse anymore there?
Wow. I think
all
we're
right.
good enough.
So for our last topic, I hopefully teased and tantalized you earlier the way I do to Brian when he's on the other side of the wall that separates our offices. With talk of Hillary Clinton. Oh, you can hear him laughing in the green room now. With talk of Hillary Clinton and the I word, impeachment. If you check out westernjournal.com, which, by the way, powers WJ Live, if you check out westernjournal.com, a little bit later today, we're going to be publishing an op-ed by one Chris Ann Hall. Chris Ann Hall is a constitutional expert. She submitted this op-ed earlier today, and I had a different topic I wanted to talk with you guys about, and I changed it last minute because this was so interesting. I'm going to read a few passages from this just to give you a taste of what's going on, but essentially the argument here is that if Democrats really do the unthinkable, if they are foolish enough to impeach Donald J. Trump as a civilian, as a citizen, as a non-federal employee, they're going to open the door for something very bad to happen. I'm going to pick up part of the way through this op-ed. As I said, you'll be able to see this later tonight or tomorrow on westernjournal.com. Picking up partway through. Some may argue that once a person leaves federal employment, the option for impeachment is no longer viable. However, the precedent of impeachment tells us otherwise, and a view of history can help us understand why. William Belknap served as Secretary of War under Ulysses S. Grant from 1869 to 1876. While Secretary of War, Belknap's extravagant lifestyle came into question. Over a number of years, funds were, over a few years, Congress investigated, and they found out that thousands of dollars were funneled to Belknap in quarterly payments, totaling up to $20,000 before all was said and done. Some of the accusations against Belknap included indirectly selling weapons to France and for accepting illicit kickbacks in exchange for making political appointments. Gun running, kickbacks, political deals for financial gain. Isn't that exactly what evidence strongly suggests Hillary Clinton is or was involved in? Again, I'm reading from Chris Ann Hall. According to Senate records, on March 2nd, 1876, just minutes before the House of Representatives was scheduled to vote on articles of impeachment, Belknap raced to the White House, handed Grant his resignation, and ignominiously burst into tears. Belknap's resignation didn't stop his impeachment, and there's the rub. Later that day, members voted unanimously to send the Senate 5 articles of impeachment. What was Congress' chief accusation against Belknap? Criminally disregarding his duty as Secretary of War and basely prostituting his high office to his lust for private gain. And we know nobody likes prostitutes in high office like the Clintons do. That's me, not Chris Ann.
Oh, boy.
If Democrats do pull the trigger, Chris Ann writes, they may end up getting more than they bargained for. For example, Hillary Clinton was accused of a very serious federal crime. Although the Department of Justice decided not to criminally prosecute her for that crime, under the Belknap precedent, there would be nothing to stop Hillary from coming under prosecution of impeachment in today's Congress. We know that's not going to happen, or any Congress in the future, causing her to lose her pension and to be blocked from running for federal office ever again. Now, I don't think she's going to run for federal office ever again. I don't think the Democrat. She is a Clinton. I don't think the Democrat Party. I think they will lock her in a box.
Yeah.
Wrap rocks around, chain rocks to it, and drop it in the ocean before they let her run again. Mm-hmm. But I do think a symbolic impeachment would appeal to a whole lot of people. Perhaps some of the people, like we talked about earlier today. I can absolutely see Marjorie Taylor Greene getting just absolutely loving this idea. Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious, what do you guys make of that? What do you think you think the Republicans have got the guts to do it? You think the Democrats are thinking along these lines? Are they animus possessed and not thinking about anything else, or are they making political calculations? What do you guys think?
I think Democrats are definitely animus possessed. I think that's obvious for anyone to see. Even if the Democrats do impeach Trump a second time, I hate the idea of going after Hillary Clinton. To me personally, and this is very much something that I blame Democrats for. This is completely on them. I really despise the idea of impeachment being a symbolic gesture. Mm-hmm. To me, it is a serious offense that should be reserved for legitimately serious cases. I don't think either of Trump's impeachments rise to that occasion. But the idea you bring to the table, Josh, it's such a slippery slope. And I just don't like it. I don't like the idea of any president who does something or has done something getting impeached because the other party doesn't like him or her. It's just, I think it's a dangerous precedent. And again, this sounds like I'm criticizing Chrisanne Hall.
No, I don't think it sounds like that.
It is 100% on the Democrats right now, because what they are doing is just so blatant, pathetic. It's just them throwing a hissy fit, wanting to, kick someone on their way out, or is out, I guess. He's not even on his way out. I don't like impeachment being used as a political prop. I don't think that is the correct use of it. I don't think it should be the case ever.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that there are a lot of people that would very much like to see Hillary Clinton impeached. I think that it would be great to watch. But, I also think that this is one occasion where we can kind of rise above and recognize she's probably not going to run for federal office again. This is really kind of meaningless at this point. At this point, it would just be to kind of say, we told you so. We know that you did something bad, which we do know that she did something bad. But I don't think that... I think that the Republican Party can do a little bit better than kind of clamoring for her impeachment. Just to sort of say, you wanted to impeach our guy, we're going to impeach your guy.
Yeah. So that's really interesting, because then it raises the question that we brought up a little bit ago about Republicans knowing how to lose and Democrats always being willing to fight the fight. And then in principle, I agree. In principle, I agree with both of you.
Well,
But I wonder, what it takes us back to is the issue of virtue. The problem in all of this is that we have people who are not behaving virtuously, who don't live virtuously. And so when you try to live virtuously and someone else out there is ruthless, it can be very difficult to fend them off.
That's true.
And I think you were even on this show. This was a while ago, Josh, but we talked about sort of this race to the bottom of sort of, like you said, morality between the Dems and the Republicans. At a certain point, someone has to be the bigger person.
Yeah.
But like you said, the person, the adult willing to be the bigger person will often get trampled or taken advantage of, and it's a thorny situation. I 100% agree with you on that. I do wonder whether or not if the Democrats are salvageable in any way, shape, or form. I mean, there are some, I disagree with them on principle, but some more.
Joe Manchin,
and she's not in politics really anymore, but Tulsi Gabbard. Like there are some Democrats
I think she's coming back. And even Sinema on the filibuster. I mean, she's an Arizona Democrat.
But then that little nugget of hope just gets squashed by when you see like the squad, and it's just like, man, like it's I still think it's a race to the bottom, and it just, I don't see where we pull up. And that concerns me. I
agree with that, and that's where I get shaky again, thinking about, good gracious, if the Democrats actually get their way and get a number of these, there are going to be Americans who say, well, look, I'm going to look for another option here. This is no good, and I worry we're getting to the point where it's either. We're either going to have to have revival, or we're looking at something very dangerous happening, and I know which of those I prefer.
Right.
Something dangerous.
And that's no, and that is the only hope. And depending on how you count it, there have been 3, 4, even 5 great awakenings through the United States history. It does seem that God has intervened at very key times to bring the nation back together and protect it, and His grace is all that's going to keep us going, and that's ultimately should be a hopeful thought. He is in control. That's going to do it for us today, folks. Thank you very much for joining us. We are so glad you were here. Thanks for taking time to watch. We are here every Monday through Friday. We start at 5 Eastern and 2 Pacific, Monday through Friday. You can check us out at youtube.com. If you're watching us from right there right now, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button. Once you hit the button, a little bell's going to pop up, and you're going to be able to click it. That is going to make sure we don't get shadow banned from you. You've heard about shadow bans. Basically, you click the bell. It's going to make sure that when we go on the air, you get a little notification. It's not intrusive, but it lets you know we're on the air, reminds you to tune in. Additionally, we are powered by the Western Journal, westernjournal.com. If you would like to support us there, please read our articles, share them with your friends, share them on Facebook, share them on social media, email your friends. Additionally, if you'd like to support us past that, go to westernjournal.com/join, westernjournal.com/join. There's several options there. You can support us financially and help make it possible to fund the reporting that we do and the work that we do. We're not one of those companies that has a huge hedge fund billionaire behind us. We're privately owned by a family, and we do the best we can with what we've got every chance we get. For those of you who were watching yesterday and who noticed that I noted I kept getting phone calls during the podcast, I'll tell you what happened. Turns out I forgot to pick my children up from school.
He admitted it on live air.
Conservatism is supposed to start at home, and I failed yesterday. But I did get the kids home. They were a little testy. It's okay. Briley Shooter, I'm very sorry. Your father still loves you. And with that, we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
The Western Journal has rolled out a brand new subscription model designed specifically for readers like you, who want the unvarnished truth that the establishment media won't tell you. Our multi-tiered plans give you exactly what you want and help us fight fake news during this, the most important election of our lives. Become a subscriber to the Western Journal today and unlock exclusive features you won't find anywhere else. It's easy. Just follow the prompts in this video to join us in equipping